Hello everyone and welcome back. I know a lot of Prot Warriors out there are having difficulty progressing through Nighthold, especially because Nighthold has a tendency of making us feel really weak because of all the magic damage that goes on in it. So today, let's go over exactly what you should be doing as a Prot Warrior to maximize your survivability in each encounter. Now, for Skorpyron, if you're on the boss, Anger Management is an option over Heavy Repercussions just because the large majority of your damage is going to come from the Arcano/ ability. Something else that you should be doing is using Spell Reflect on every single cooldown to minimize the impact that Arcano/ has on you. So right before Arcano/ is cast, you should be using Spell Reflect. Also, you shouldn't ignore keeping Shield Block up as much as possible. Just because the main source of damage is magic doesn't mean the physical abilities can be ignored. So try to keep Shield Block up as much as possible for those melee hits. Now, if you're on ad duty, you should have Shield Block ready. There is no need to use Shield Block charges while not actively tanking. So as an off tank on ad duty, only use your charges when actively tanking Skorpids. Now if you're on heroic mode, you should pop Spell Reflect right before the explosive Skorpid goes down, something at around 10 to 15% you can pop Spell Reflect. But if you're not on heroic mode, you should pop Spell Reflect as soon as all the Skorpids go down to help mitigate the dot damage that you have, given that the dot damage is going to be the highest as soon as the ads go down. Now for Chromatic Anomaly, you can also be taking Anger Management as a possibility for talent points just because of the heavy magic damage in this fight. Now if you are actively tanking Chromatic Anomaly, even though magic damage is the main source of damage you take, you should be keeping Shield Block up as an active tank. This is because Chromatic Anomaly still has melee hits. Something else you should be doing is stacking the boss and the ads together so that everyone can cleave and you can actually do more damage overall. As an off tank, you should pop Spell Reflect as soon as you become the off tank. So as soon as your stacks are as high as they're going to be, that's exactly when you want to pop Spell Reflect because that's going to have the largest impact on the magic damage you're taking. And as the off tank, you have absolutely zero need for Shield Block, so you shouldn't be wasting your rage on Shield Block. Up next, we have Trilliax. Now as the active tank, you should always be keeping Shield Block up to mitigate the melee damage, and you should have Spell Reflect up for every second slash that he does. So the first slash you can take just fine and that damage is not going to kill you, but the second slash will hurt a lot more, so you should pop Spell Reflect right before that lands. Something else to note with Trilliax is to make sure that your melee DPS have enough area to damage. You don't want any of the melee DPS standing in front of the boss and taking that slash with you. Now as an off tank to Trilliax, you don't need to be popping Shield Block at all, again that's a waste of rage. And you should have Spell Reflect up again for every second Arcane Slash just to help mitigate a little bit of the damage and help healers catch up, just because the main tank is going to be taking a big hit. Up next, we have Spellblade Aluriel. Now if you're the active tank on this fight, you should try to keep Shield Block up as much as possible. However, you need to prioritize Shield Block uptime during Annihilation. So if you don't have enough haste for 100% uptime of Shield Block, prioritize keeping those charges for exactly when Annihilation goes off. Now again, as the active tank, you should try to mitigate these Annihilations as much as possible. Since they are blockable, keep Shield Block up. But also as the active tank, when you take that second Annihilate that hurts really bad, you should be popping Demoralizing Shout right before it goes off to help you offset that increased damage. And Demoralizing Shout should be up every second Annihilate as an active tank. Now since Annihilate doesn't last too long but does a ton of damage, you are going to be getting a lot of rage from damage taken. So since you don't have the luxury of being able to use too many global cooldowns during this time, I do suggest using all of the rage during this time to just spam Ignore Pain while Annihilate is going on. It's not the most efficient because you're not going to be Vengeance Weaving, but during this short cast time, it is going to be beneficial to all of your healers. Just in case you used up all of your Shield Block charges beforehand and you have nothing by the time Annihilate rolls around, you can go ahead and use Neltharion's Fury as it has a 100% critical block chance as long as it's active. If you are the active tank during the Arcane phase, that second Annihilate is going to hurt really bad, and since in heroic mode it requires movement, I suggest saving your shield wall for that second Annihilate during movement. Now when you're off tanking Spellblade Aluriel, you don't need to be popping Shield Block at any other time besides Annihilate. Now this just means that you get to build up your Ignore Pain and Vengeance Weave properly. Now as an off tank, in normal modes, you should be helping pull all of the ads together and build threat on them. And as an off tank in heroic modes, during the Frost phase you should also pick up and keep threat on these ads. Up next we have Krosus. Now Krosus is one of those fights where anger management will also benefit you over heavy repercussions. Now as the main tank for Krosus, you should be keeping shield block up to mitigate some of the melee damage, and as the off tank, you should spell reflect as soon as you become the off tank. So whether your stacks are at 4 or at 5, when the other tank taunts off of you, use spell reflect to mitigate that dot damage, just because at that point, that dot damage will be at its highest. Also as the off tank, there is absolutely no need to be popping shield block, so you can save that rage for Ignore Pains or Vengeance Weaving. And just a general tip, if right before a slam, one of the tanks, be it yourself or your other tank, is down really low, you should use Demoralizing Shout to ensure that each tank survives a slam. If you also have trinket cooldowns, you can also use it during slam or during a high dot phase in case your stacks get higher than 4 or 5. Up next we have Tichondrius. Now with Tichondrius, you don't get a break from active mitigation. Whether you're main tanking Tichondrius or tanking the adds, you should have shield block up as much as possible because this is a very physical intense fight. Now when you are the ad tank, this is a perfect place to use Neltharion's Fury for its cleave abilities and its ability to just crit block and minimize damage. And also during phases 2 and 3, when you get the arcane debuff, you shouldn't run back to the boss and drop it right on the main tank. Run off to the side and make sure you drop it somewhere where it won't affect the tank or melee. During the illusionary phase in this fight, you should be taunting and using heroic throw as much as possible to get as many gargoyles centralized to you as possible. What you should do is cleave and thunderclap spam as much as you can to pick up all of the gargoyles and centralize them in one location. Up next we have Star Augur, which is honestly the bane of our existence. Now typically when I go to a Star Augur fight, I have a few pieces of gear that I swap out. Basically my stat priorities for Star Augur become haste versatility instead of haste mastery, just because all of that magic damage leaves nothing to block. Again, this is one of those fights where you can pick up anger management over heavy repercussions. This is a fight where you really don't have to be using any shield block at all until phase 3 and only if you're tanking the ad. So again, don't use shield block for the large majority of this fight. Use spell reflect as often as possible right before comets hit you. When that comet hits you, it's the largest amount of damage you can be taking, so by using spell reflect right before it hits you, you're going to maximize the usage of that magic reduction. When you are running around in phase 1 and phase 2 kiting these debuffs, what you can do to maximize your rage gained is actually spam Thunderclap when you're away from Star. Now in phase 1, when you run back into the groups to get rid of that debuff, you can actually get 2 or 3 global cooldowns in on Star to build up more rage. This should be Shield Slam, Devastate, and another Shield Slam if you get lucky with the proc. If not, you can run out and start spamming Thunderclap again and take the Meteor. Again, during phase 2, Thunderclap and Ignore Pain spam when not actively on the boss. During phase 3, if you are tanking the big ad in the edges of the room, you can use shield block because he does do some melee damage. If you are on the boss, this is the perfect time for Neltharion's Fury since you're going to be able to cleave some of these smaller ads. And you should swap between the boss and the ad every 30 to 40 stacks. Just because we don't have high magic damage mitigation, that dot will add up and it will eventually kill us. Up next we have Botanist. Now if you are actively tanking Botanist, you should have shield block up as much as possible. As the off tank, you shouldn't be using shield block at all. What you should actually be doing is focusing on your Vengeance Weaving and Ignore Pains. Since your damage as an off tank is dependent on the active damage that the main tank is taking, something like Demoralizing Shout is going to help you if your stacks get too high. Something else to note is I like to save my spell reflect for when the second sphere goes down. Normally the healers can deal with the first one just fine, but they might end up falling behind when the second one blows up. So you can save your spell reflect for the second or third sphere blowing up, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. And now we have Elisande. Now whenever you're actively tanking either Elisande or the ad, you should always keep shield block up as much as possible. Something else to note positioning wise is that you should stack up these ads and Elisande as much as you can, but don't stack up the bubble debuff that drops on the ground. That means you can stack them up, but as soon as the blue ad is going to go down, then you need to move away and go to a different location. During phase 2 and phase 3, if you get the debuff that's going to cause you to do AoE damage, that's exactly the moment when you can pop spell reflect as soon as that's about to detonate. If you're not actively tanking Elisande or the ad and you're soaking up a puddle, that is also a very good time to pop spell reflect. Something else you can do while soaking up a puddle is spam Thunderclap and spam Ignore Pains just to minimize the damage taken. And last but not least, we have Gul'dan. Now during phase 1, whether you're tanking the Fellord or the Trapper, you should have shield block up 100% of the time. Something else to note, if for some reason you need to cross over any of the Fel Flames, that's the perfect time to use Spell Reflect, but you also have Heroic Leap to help you avoid that. During phase 2, whether you're tanking normal or heroic, you should use Spell Reflect every time you're going to pop a Fel Scythe if it's up. The Fel Scythe damage is completely magical damage, and in order to help minimize that damage, you can pop Spell Reflect right before you go into that. Now if you are in heroic, whether you're on Gul'dan or the ad, you should have shield block up 100% of the time, but in normal mode, if you're not actively tanking Gul'dan, there is no need for you to be wasting that rage on shield block. Something else to note in phase 2 or phase 3, if you space out and forget to pop Fel Scythe and the energy is getting too high, you can also pop Demoralizing Shout alongside your Spell Reflect to help minimize that damage. Something else you could do to help out your team, as soon as the eyes spawn, you could actually pop Neltharion's Fury and help do some cleave damage. But that wraps up all of Nighthold. Those are all of the tips and tricks that I've gathered as I've done normal and heroic mode. If you guys have any additional advice to give each other, go ahead and drop that in the comment section down below. I hope this helps some Prot Warriors out there. I know there are some fights that just make us feel really weak, like Krosus and Star Augur. So remember, take some tomes to be able to respec during this raid, and utilize all of the kit that you have to your advantage. I know I didn't cover Shield Wall too much here, but since that's our biggest cooldown, you should only use it during emergency situations. So think something along the lines of getting 7 to 10 stacks on Krosus, 20 to 30 stacks on Botanist. Any ridiculous outlier case like that, you want to have that button ready to go so it's not an instant wipe. But I hope you guys actually got something from this. Again, if you guys have any additional tips, go ahead and leave that in the comment section down below. And if not, as always, good luck tanking out there.